The story is called Leavings. My mother always remembered the way her mother told the story. It began with the passage on the ship, the city of Chicago, in the terrible winter that followed the great blizzard of 1888. Kate Griffin, my grandmother, of County Kerry, Ireland, on the eve of her 20th birthday, was going to New York. The trip would be a turbulent one in the sharp March of that winter. Kate, who was traveling with several girls from her village, became their nurse when the great swells of the Atlantic seas proved their match. Taking such good care of us, the girls had written home to tell her mother. Kate was leaving for New York, city of promise for so many of Ireland's immigrants. But Kate Griffin was going, not because she wanted to, or like so many, because she needed to, but simply because her sister had asked her, had pleaded with her and her mother. So alone was she, so homesick in New York, even with two brothers there. Then, when Bridget sent a ticket, Kate said yes, she would come. And she did. But she carried with her the saddest memory. As the boat train pulled away from the small brick station in the country town of Listowel, Kate saw her widowed mother crumble, fainting in a dead weight as she watched her youngest and her dearest child take her leave. Kate, who never returned to Ireland, carried that memory with her always, as did my mother. In it was there a life lesson, leaving home, abandoning someone you love for someone you love equally well. What do you do when there are two things you care deeply about? It was a question Kate would revisit again in her life, and it is the theme of a story that always captured my imagination, and I believe my mother's. But I get ahead of their story. Bridget Griffin, Kate's sister, eagerly awaiting her arrival, met her sister in New York when the boat docked. So thankful to Kate, she would help her get settled, find a job in Manhattan. Typically, for so many of the young Irish women of that day, Kate would take a job as a maid. She lived in, working for the fairly well-to-do New York family of a doctor whose house stood on the corner of Madison and 87th Street. She was paid what seems a paltry sum, even for the time, $14 a month, and an extra $1 for ironing. But she said she had room and board, and the family were benign, if not good to her. On her day off, she could treat her friends to lunch at the house, but in spite of her good fortune, Kate said she cried each night for a year for her mother. 5 years later, at one of her sister Bridget's celebrated Sunday dinners for the burgeoning Irish community of Manhattan's Rector Street, Kate met Maurice Hennessy, a young man from Limerick, Ireland. In 1893, they were married, and soon there was a growing family in a walk-up flat on Christopher Street in Greenwich Village. If Kate's husband had a great passion in life, it was for Ireland. Caught up in the political upheaval of the times, of Parnell's efforts to win the Irish state independence from England, Maurice Hennessy followed intensely the events of his homeland. He was an avid daily reader of 3 New York newspapers, The Sun, The Irish World, and The Globe. When he would ask his daughter to fetch the daily paper, his wife would chide him, saying, "Isn't it the same news in all the papers, Maurice?" He replied, "But it's the editorials, Kate, the editorials." Searching for Ancestors, Nolans and Griffins in Ballynoneen, County Kerry, Ireland. Sky above, clouds of multi-layered grays, some with blue and shots of white-lit sun. Down the lone mountain the land drops softly, with bird song, straggling hedges, trees emerging. There a quiet, a stillness. There, where? No, not now, Nolan's Griffins. No, I'm afraid they haven't been here in a while, said Mr. Flaherty, who would have been a neighbor.